They called me a burden. I became the reason they survived. Still remember the exact moment I realized my family didn't see me as a person anymore. I was sitting at the top of the stairs. It was late. Late enough that the house should have been quiet, late enough that no one expected me to be awake. But I was. Because when you grow up feeling like you don't belong, sleep doesn't come easily. Voices carried from the kitchen. My mother's voice. Tired. Heavy. And then my father's single quotes. Lower. Colder. And then she said it. I don't know how much longer we can carry her. Carry her. Not raise. Not support. Carry. Like I was something heavy. Something unwanted. Something they were forced to drag behind them. My chest tightened. I stopped breathing. My father didn't answer right away. And for a second, I hoped he would defend me. That he would say something like, "She's your daughter." But he did in single quotes. Instead, he sighed. That sigh, it said everything. She's just a burden. That word didn't just hurt. It entered me. It settled somewhere deep, somewhere permanent. I was 17 years old, and in that moment, I understood exactly who I was to them. Not their daughter, their burden. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just sat there. Alone. Invisible. Breaking quietly. I wasn't always like that. I wasn't always a problem. At least I don't think I was when I was little. My mom used to brush my hair before school. She'd smile. She'd hem. She'd call me her sunshine. But things changed. Slowly. So slowly I didn't even notice at first. It started when I was 14. The anxiety, the panic attacks, the feeling that something inside me was broken. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't control it. I just knew that suddenly everything was harder. Getting out of bed. Going to school. Being normal. And the more I struggled, the more they pulled away. My father stopped asking how my day was. My mother stopped smiling. They stopped seeing me. They only saw the inconvenience, the missed school days, the therapy bills, the silence at the dinner table. I became something they had to deal with. Not someone they loved, and eventually they stopped pretending. After that night on the stairs, I changed. Not overnight. But permanently. I stopped asking for help. Stopped talking about how I felt. Stopped hoping they would understand. Because hope is dangerous when it dies too many times. I became quiet. Small. Careful. I learned how to disappear in my own home. I learned how to make myself less loud. Less emotional. Less present. Because less felt safer. Less felt easier for everyone. Especially them. On my 18th birthday, nothing happened. No cake. No candles. No presents. My mother said she was busy. My father forgot. I spent the day in my room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could exist and not matter at all. That was the day I stopped waiting, stopped believing things would get better, stopped believing I was worth anything. Because when the people who created you treat you like a mistake, you start to believe you are one. A few months later, my father lost his job. The company he'd worked at for 23 years shut down. Just like that. And everything in the house shifted. The tension. The fear. The anger. It filled every room. He stopped sleeping. Stopped shaving. Stopped talking. My mother picked up extra shifts at the hospital. She came home exhausted. Broken. And I watched it all happen from the edges. From the place I had learned to live, out of the way, out of sight, out of their lives. But something inside me started to change because for the first time, I saw them the way they had always seen me. Helpless. Lost. Afraid. Human. And I realized something I wasn't supposed to realize. They weren't strong. They were just pretending. Just like I had been. One night, I found my father sitting alone in the dark. He didn't know I was there. His head was in his hands, his shoulders shaking. My father never cried, not when his parents died. Not when we lost the house, not ever. But that night, he did, and I didn't know what to do. Because he had never known what to do with my pain. So I stood there. Frozen. Watching the man who called me a burden collapse under his own weight. And for a moment, I hated him. I hated him for being human, for being weak, for being everything he never allowed me to be. But underneath the anger, there was something else. Something quieter. Something more dangerous. Understanding. And that was the beginning of everything. The beginning of the moment when the burden started to become something else. I didn't realize it at the time, but that night changed something inside me. Not in a loud, dramatic way. It was quiet, fragile. Like the first crack in a wall that had been standing too long. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, not because I wanted to, because I was used to it. My body had been trained by years of responsibility my age wasn't supposed to carry. I sat up slowly on the thin mattress, listening. Silence. For a moment, panic hit my chest. Then I heard a breathing. Daniel single quotes as breathing. Steady. Alive. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I turned my head and saw Mom asleep in the chair beside him, her head tilted to the side. Her hand still wrapped around his. She looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Like life had finally forced her to stop pretending she was strong. I stood up quietly and walked to the window. The sky was turning orange, a new day. I didn't feel hopeful, not yet. But I didn't feel empty either. I felt needed. And that terrified me because being needed meant being responsible. And being responsible meant there was no room to break. Over the next few days, I stayed at the hospital. I barely went home. I slept in chairs, ate from vending machines, wore the same clothes. I didn't care. Daniel started getting better. Slowly. He could sit up. Talk more. Smile again. And every time he smiled, something inside my chest loosened. One afternoon, he looked at me and said quietly, "I heard you." I frowned. "What?" That night, my heart stopped. He continued, "When I woke up, you were talking to me." I froze. I didn't know what to say. He swallowed. "You said you weren't going anywhere." My throat tightened. He looked down at his hands. "You really meant that?" There was so much fear in his voice. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of being too much. Fear I knew too well. I sat beside him. "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly, like he was trying to believe it. Then he whispered, "Why?" That question. It broke me because I didn't have a simple answer. I took a deep breath. Because no one stayed for me. He looked at me. Really looked, and in that moment, he understood more about me than anyone ever had. When Daniel was discharged, things didn't magically become easier. If anything, they became harder. He needed medication. Follow-ups. Monitoring. Mom had to go back to work, which meant I became the one responsible. Again. But this time, it felt different, not because the burden was lighter, but because I wasn't invisible anymore. Mom started talking to me. Asking me things. Simple things. Did he eat? How was his mood today? Did he take his meds? It wasn't affection, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. And for someone who had lived her whole life unseen, that mattered more than I wanted to admit. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I got a letter. A real letter, not a bill. Not junk. My name, written clearly. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands were shaking. I didn't know why. Inside was a single piece of paper. I unfolded it slowly, and when I read it, my vision blurred. It was from the diner, the place I had applied to months ago. "We are pleased to offer you the position." I couldn't breathe. They wanted me. They actually wanted me. I had been so used to rejection that acceptance felt like a mistake. Mom was in the kitchen when I walked in. She looked up. "What is it?" I handed her the letter without a word. She read it. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Then she looked at me. That's good. 2 words. But they hit harder than any insult she'd ever thrown at me. Because there was no disappointment in her voice. No irritation, just neutral, and somehow that felt like progress. My first day at the diner was terrifying. I almost didn't go in. I stood outside for 10 minutes, staring at the door. My reflection looked back at me. Small. Nervous. Uncertain. The same girl everyone had written off. But then I remembered Daniel's face, and I walked in. The smell of coffee wrapped around me. Warm. Comforting. A woman with kind eyes smiled. "You must be Elena." I nodded. "I'm Rosa," she said. Welcome. No one had ever said that to me before. Not like that. Not like they meant it. Rosa became more than a boss. She became the first person who saw me as something other than a burden. She taught me everything. How to carry plates. How to talk to customers. How to breathe when things got overwhelming. But more than that, she listened. One night after closing, she asked, "How old are you?" 19. She tilted her head. "You look older." I laughed softly. "I feel older." She didn't laugh. She just nodded, like she understood. Then she said something I will never forget. "You know, being strong isn't the same as being okay." I didn't know how to respond, because I had spent my whole life pretending those 2 things were the same. Money was still tight. Life was still hard. But something inside me was changing. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was building something. Slowly, quietly, piece by piece. Daniel started smiling more. Mom started talking more, and me. I started existing, not as a burden, but as a person. Then one night, everything shifted again. I came home late from work. The house was quiet. My stomach dropped. Mom, no answer. Daniel, silence. Panic crawled up my spine. I walked further inside. And then I saw them sitting at the table together waiting. Mom looked at me. Sit down. My heart started pounding. I sat. Daniel smiled nervously. Mom took a breath. Then she said words I never thought I'd hear. We need to talk. Her voice wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It was something else. Something unfamiliar. Something that made my chest tighten. She looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see resentment in her eyes. I saw something else. Something fragile. Something human. She swallowed and said, I was wrong about you. My world stopped. I was wrong about you. Those words didn't sound real. They hung in the air between us, fragile and heavy, like glass that could shatter if anyone moved too fast. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared at her. Because my whole life, I had imagined hearing those words. In arguments I rehearsed alone. In silent car rides. In nights I cried into my pillow. But now that they were finally here, I didn't know what to do with them. Mom looked nervous. I had never seen her nervous. Her fingers were intertwined on the table, squeezing each other. She swallowed, I thought. She began, then stopped. Her voice cracked. She tried again. I thought you were weak. The honesty stung. But I didn't look away. She continued. I thought you wouldn't survive this world. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. And I was afraid. That word confused me. My whole life, she had made me afraid. I had never considered that she might have been afraid too. She looked down. When your father left, I broke. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And you? You looked just like him. My chest tightened. I couldn't separate the two of you. There it was, not an excuse, not a justification, just the truth. Ugly. Human. Painful. She finally looked back at me. But you stayed. My throat closed. You stayed when no one else did. My hands trembled under the table. You took care of him. She nodded toward Daniel. You took care of me. Her voice broke completely now. And I never said thank you. Silence filled the room. Daniel was crying quietly beside her. I realized I was to. She wiped her face quickly, like she was embarrassed by her own emotions. I'm sorry. She said. To simple words, but they carried 19 years of weight. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how. Forgiveness isn't instant. It isn't a switch you flip. It's a door, and sometimes you don't even know if you're ready to touch the handle. I don't know what to say, I admitted. My voice sounded small. Honest. She nodded. That's okay. We sat there in the quiet, not fixed, not healed. But open for the first time. Things didn't magically become perfect after that. She didn't suddenly become a different person overnight. And neither did I. We were still strangers in many ways, just strangers who shared blood and memories. But something had shifted. She started asking about my day. Really asking, not out of obligation, but curiosity. She started cooking dinner again. And sometimes she waited until I got home so we could eat together. The first time she did that, I almost cried. Not because of the food, but because she had waited for me. No one had ever waited for me before. Daniel changed too. He became softer. Kinder. More aware. One afternoon, while I was washing dishes, he came up beside me. He said quietly. I used to believe her. I paused. About what? He looked ashamed. That you were a burden. The words hurt. Even now, he continued quickly. I was wrong. I stayed silent. He swallowed. You're the reason I'm alive. My hands froze in the sink. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. You never gave up on me. Emotion rose in my chest so fast it scared me. Because for the first time in my life, someone saw my pain. Not as weakness, but as strength. Work at the diner became my safe place. Rosa noticed the changes in me immediately. You're standing differently, she said one morning. I laughed. What does that mean? She smiled. It means you're starting to see yourself. I didn't fully understand, not yet, but I felt it. Something inside me was growing. Something that had been buried for years. Self-worth. One evening, The diner was almost empty. Just me and Rosa cleaning up. She leaned against the counter. Can I ask you something? Okay. What do you want? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? She shrugged. Your life, your future. What do you want from it? I froze. No one had ever asked me that. Because no one had ever cared. I don't know. I admitted. She nodded. That's okay. She stepped closer. But you deserve to find out. Deserve? That word felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. Not me. But she said it like it was fact, like it wasn't up for debate. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder. What if she was right? Weeks turned into months slowly. Life became something I recognized. Not perfect, but stable. Peaceful. Mom smiled more. Daniel laughed more. And me. I dreamed more, small dreams, quiet dreams, but dreams nonetheless. Then one night, something happened that I never expected. Something that would prove, once and for all, that everything had changed. I came home late again. Exhausted. My feet aching. My mind heavy. When I opened the door, the house was dark, but there was a note on the table. My name. I picked it up. My hands trembling. I opened it. And read, Elena, we're proud of you. I stopped breathing. 3 words, we're proud of you. Tears filled my eyes instantly, not because I needed their approval, but because I had lived my whole life without it. And now, it was real. It was there. It was mine. I sat down and cried, not from pain, but from release, from healing. From finally understanding something that had taken me 19 years to learn. I was never the burden. I was a bridge, the thing that held everything together. The thing that refused to break, the thing that survived. But the real moment, the moment everything came full circle, happened weeks later. And it started with 3 words I never expected to hear again. Elena, I need you. Those words froze me in place. I was standing at the kitchen sink, my hands still wet. The sound of running water fading into the background as my heart began to pound harder. I turned slowly. Mom was standing in the doorway, but something was different. She didn't look angry. She didn't look cold. She looked small. Fragile. Human. Her hands were shaking. In all my life, I had never seen her like that. Not once. What happened? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Something was wrong. It's Daniel, she said. My stomach dropped. What about him? She swallowed. He's in trouble. We drove to the hospital in silence. The same hospital. The same white walls. The same smell. Memories flooded back. The night I thought I had lost him. The night I realized how much I had to lose. Mom sat beside me in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. She looked terrified. And I realized something in that moment that changed everything. She wasn't the strong one anymore. I was. Daniel was sitting on the edge of a hospital bed when we walked in. He looked up. His eyes were red. Ashamed. Relieved. Double quotes, Elena, he said softly. I walked toward him. What happened? He hesitated. Then he broke. I messed up. His voice cracked. I lost my job. My chest tightened. And I didn't tell anyone. He looked down at his hands. I couldn't. His shoulders shook. I didn't want to be a burden. The word hit me like a punch. Burden. I sat beside him. You're not a burden, I said. He laughed bitterly. That's easy for you to say. I grabbed his hand. No, I said firmly. It's not. He looked at me. Confused. I took a deep breath. My whole life, I believed I was one. Silence filled the room. But I was wrong. My voice softened. And so are you. He stared at me. Like he was seeing me for the first time. Tears filled his eyes. I don't know how to fix this. I squeezed his hand. You don't have to fix it alone. That night, the 3 of us sat together, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as a family. Broken. Imperfect. But together. Mom cried. Daniel cried. And I didn't cry, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't holding everything together alone. They were holding me too. Months passed. Daniel found a new job. Mom started smiling again. And me? I finally did something I never thought I would do. I applied to college. The day the acceptance letter came, I stared at it for an hour before opening it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from disbelief. This wasn't supposed to be my life. I wasn't supposed to have a future. I was supposed to be the burden, the failure, the one everyone whispered about. But I wasn't anymore. I opened the letter, and when I read the word congratulations, I broke down, not because I doubted myself, but because I finally believed. The night before my first day, Mom knocked on my door. She held something in her hands, a small box. "I wanted you to have this," she said. I opened it. Inside was a necklace. Simple. Silver. Beautiful. "It was mine," she said. She hesitated. "But I want it to be yours now." I looked at her. "Why?" She smiled softly. "Because you carried all of us when you shouldn't have had to." Tears filled my eyes, and now, she continued, "It's your time to carry yourself." On my first day of college, I stood outside the building and took a deep breath. Students walked past me. Laughing. Talking. Living. For a moment, I felt like that invisible girl again. The one no one saw. The one no one believed in. But then I touched the necklace around my neck, and I remembered I wasn't her anymore. I wasn't the burden. I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the girl they whispered about. I was the girl who survived, the girl who stayed, the girl who became the reason they survived too. Years later, Mom said something to me I will never forget. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. She looked at me and said, "I used to think you were the weakest person in this family." She paused. Then she smiled. "But you were the strongest. People will call you a burden. They will call you weak. They will make you feel invisible. But they are not the ones who decide who you are. You are. And sometimes the person they think will break everything becomes the reason everything survives." I was the burden, and then I became the reason they lived.